Alright, hey there everybody, this is Sam here from Samuel Plays Brass, and I would like to thank you all for 5,000 subscribers. I mean, 7,000 subscribers. When did we hit 5K? Yeah, that figures. We're gonna pretend like we're not months late to the party here, and we're gonna act like I just hit 5K. Sound good? A little over 5 years ago, I was but a wee lad, and so was this channel. It was less than 1% the size it is today. But for 50 subscribers on the channel, I decided I would tell my trumpet playing story. I've been playing for some 4 years at the time, which really doesn't seem like that long thinking back on it, but I was sure I had a story to tell, and so I darn well told it. Today, we're going to pick up the missing pieces where we left off and see where it takes us. For those of you, most of you at this point of course, who were fortunate enough not to know me in my earlier years of life, I'll give you a little recap. I picked up the trumpet in 5th grade as part of elementary school band because it was mandatory that we choose an instrument, and I had a look at all of them. I saw that the trumpet had 3 buttons, and I thought, surely you can't go wrong with that. Turns out there's a lot of ways you can go wrong with it. Having chosen it as a slacker instrument, it became clear to me very quickly that it was not going to work out. I sat there not knowing how to play a note for 2 months. A solid 2 months before I got my first tone. Probably ended 5th grade with about a low F sharp to maybe an F in the staff, if we're being generous. It was kind of pathetic. I transferred schools in 6th grade to a little magnet program it was 5th through 8th, but I only ended up there in 6th because I was a little stupid when I took the entrance exam. And much to my dismay, band was required there too, so I couldn't quit the trumpet as much as I wanted to, and so I gave it another shot. I figured, we've come this far, why not give it another try? I didn't feel like trying out a different instrument. And for another year, in another band that didn't do chair tests, I was the very clear last chair. But what changed was the band director there guilted me a little bit more effectively, and I started practicing. So around 7th grade, I'm starting to practice a little bit more, pick up some speed as a player, start to enjoy music a little bit, and I teach myself for some time, and then my parents get me private lessons around 8th grade, or the summer before, and that's when my playing journey really begins. And that pretty much brings us up to speed with the 50 subscriber video where I was a freshman in high school during the 2016 to 2017 school year. Man, what a time to be alive. New school, new faces, new experiences and attitudes. I had a real grand time trying to figure out where I fit in socially, because frankly, I just didn't. But I did have one thing, and it was band. And so band and music became my identity. I just immersed myself in them to the very deepest extent possible. I was in the wind ensemble and constantly practicing, talking about music, and, boring all my friends to death, both intentionally and unintentionally showing off, because I was a real insufferable ankle biter at 14 years old. The few friends I did manage to have were invariably band kids, and even they would get tired of me talking about music. But, yeah, I had my first foray into jazz. I joined the lower jazz band and was made lead trumpet there and had to figure out how to sort of adapt my tone and style and set the standard for the trumpet section there. It was a real interesting time in life. I started doubling in the trumpet family around then. The summer just before, I got this cheap Chinese E-flat trumpet just because I'd seen the Canadian brass perform on E-flats, and I said, yes, I need one of those. And also, as a gift my freshman year, I asked for and received this piccolo trumpet, which... It's so stupid to start piccolo trumpet that early on. Most players will wait at least until the end of high school, and often, sometime in college to start picking it up, just because it's a devilish little instrument to play. And it's just, I didn't realize how stupid it was to start off that early. But hey, for better or worse, it gave me time to make every mistake it's possible to make on the piccolo trumpet. And we'll say that'll make me a better teacher, right? If not a better player. And so I entered my sophomore year of high school on a musical high. I'd just gotten a cornet. I was experimenting with darker and deeper sounds in music, which was a lot of fun, and a good balance to all the high notes, because I'd just gotten done playing lead trumpet for a big band at a summer camp, and I was definitely on cloud 9 after that. I really fancied myself quite the lead player at the time. Sure, I had the high notes, and I was finally getting to put them to use, but I really wasn't there in terms of sound, or style, or groove, or anything like that. I really like to think I was, though, and, looking back on it, I'd like to think that my freshman year mellowed me out enough as a musician and a person, but what it took was a slightly more humbling incident. All this time I'd had dental braces, and, people would tell me it was impressive I could play high notes and all that with braces, but I'd never found it much of an obstacle up to this point. Sure, I had a band break every now and then, but nothing major. And then I was preparing for all-state auditions, because I really wanted to do more honor bands and experience music at a higher caliber. And about, I'd say 2 weeks before the audition, I got my braces off. I'd seen friends get their braces off, and they invariably would sound a little funny for the first day or two, and then all of a sudden they'd be playing better than ever before. Would you like to know how it went for me? This is a day that I will forever remember viscerally. I got home from school just so excited. First thing I did was run down to the basement, set my phone up on the stand, and start recording like it was mommy recording baby's first steps, except it was Sam's first post-braces note. I was chumming it up on camera, I got the cornet out, put my lips to it and blew, and nothing came out. Oh, that's weird. Let me try that again. Nothing. 2 failed attempts. What's going on? I'm not getting any sound out the bell. I turned off my phone, leaned against the basement wall, and just cried. I didn't know what to do. I was stunned. And that is the very closest I've ever come to quitting music. I really wanted to that day. For the past months, I'd had dreams coming to fruition of being a professional musician, and that definitely squashed it. That was the end of it. I sent emails to my school band director and my youth symphony director pretty much saying, look guys, I don't know what to tell you. I can't play a note. I'm going to embarrass myself if I try, so I better just not try. And both of them sent back emails basically saying, no, you better give this a shot. This is not going to work. And so, I tried. It gave me a chance to totally wipe the slate clean and develop a real, rational sort of embouchure. While I had braces, sure, I had the high notes, but I'd grown really reliant on all that metal in my mouth, adding additional volume, and so that kind of affected the way I pivoted my horn and positioned my lips on the mouthpiece. So it was a really nice opportunity to just wipe the slate clean, and I think that day was the final bludgeoning, humbling stroke that I needed to just finally come back down to earth. For about a month, I did a really good job of not doing anything strenuous, nothing too loud or high in my practice, just really ironing out the middle notes and trying to develop my tone quality there, which was slow going, but it was working out bit by bit. And then, about a month into the embouchure shift, I find by accident that I have a slight aptitude for the high register, and yeah, the rest is history, right? It doesn't take long for me to become an obnoxious lead player again, but this time, I make sure to do it right. I make sure to be a little bit more humble about it. And that brings us to my junior year, at which point I'm halfway done with high school, and about a year into the new embouchure shift. It still feels new by all accounts. And at this point, I'm only in youth symphony and private lessons. And that's because I found a new career aspiration in the field of engineering, which is what I'm studying in college today. And the trouble is, my schedule conflicted. I couldn't do both engineering and wind ensemble, so something had to go. One day of the week I was in orchestra, one day of the week I was in lessons, and for the rest of the week I was musically twiddling my thumbs. I had to find my own motivation to practice and sound good. I had to sort of be my own teacher because I couldn't learn off of a trumpet section on a daily basis through osmosis like I was doing in wind ensemble for the past 2 years. And being the only trumpet in youth orchestra, I obviously didn't have the greatest source of fodder from there. So I really kind of had to teach myself at that point outside of lessons. And by all accounts, that sounds like it should have been a wad of gum on my shoe while I'm running a race, but this year actually marked a real period of growth for me. I think junior year was the year I made the most progress on my tone quality. My tone, obviously, on the new embouchure was not very developed, and if you listen to early junior year recordings, they're really nothing special. I was kind of surprised listening to them recently by how not great I sounded. But honestly, if you listen to the course of the year, you start to hear a fair amount of progress. There's a tangible difference in sound between beginning and end. And I finished off that year winning a solo competition. I was the only entrant, but anyway, I impressed the judges well enough that they thought I was a pretty remarkable player, and I still didn't think so, but it was the confidence boost I needed to realize that I wasn't just still at that stage of struggling to center one single note on a new embouchure, and it was a really healthy building experience for me, and for how hard that year should have been, it actually turned out fairly successfully for me. I was really motivated in youth symphony because we played some great rep. I was starting small ensembles again when, admittedly there were times we were counting hundreds of measures of rest, and so instead we'd go off into a room and I'd work on my chamber music and leadership skills. Senior year served as a really nice continuation to all of this. It's at this point that I really started to be a more critical listener in music, and that allowed me to develop things like my tone and style niche as a player with more ease. I developed a much better set of self-teaching skills so that in between lessons I wasn't struggling as much, and I really honed in on my intuition in practice and kind of found my methods a little bit more. Experiences like the Youth Symphony and this summer festival I did allowed me to keep working more and more on my leadership and chamber music skills, and I felt myself through these experiences start to come into my own as a musician rather than just a trumpet player. And that was a really incredible transition to make, sort of starting to feel like I was a musician. Of course, I wasn't perfect. I had so many things to work on, and I feel like I have just as many to work on to this day, but it was really, really cool. That was also the summer, just before my senior year, that I started the Instagram Samuel Plays Brass account, and that truly floored me. in so many ways. I mean, it was humbling in the sense that I was around these incredible high school and college players that were just miles above me, but also so very encouraging in that I was learning from them, and I was backed by this incredible and constantly growing community, and it was really just a great and healthy time for me musically. Now, if you've been keeping track of the years, you'll know we're on the 2019-2020 school year, and of course we all know 2020 is everyone's favorite year. So March rolls around, the world gets turned inside out, everyone's lives are upside down, and they have these hours of free time they don't know what to do with. Sam knew what to do. Sam hit the grind. Sam smacked the grind, dare I say. I would be surprised if there was a single day in like the first 3 months of quarantine where I didn't practice like a solid 2 or 3 hours. I was constantly on it. And I said junior year was the year I made the most progress on my tone quality. It's up for debate. It's a pretty big toss-up because senior year I really developed a lot on my style and my technique. I really started to catch up in that area. And, I was 17 when I entered quarantine. I turned 18 in April. I would say that year, around that time is where I played, relative to my age, the most impressively. I think it was definitely all downhill from there. So heading into college at this point, I'd proven on 2 different occasions of adversity in my life where I wasn't getting to play with people very much, that despite my musical solitude, I would really focus on improving. I would develop as a musician at any cost. I would practice and improve. I headed into college feeling really strong musically. I now had a C trumpet and a flugelhorn to complete the trumpet family pack. It was a really good time for me. I was practicing a lot that summer, like I mentioned, just about every day. And so what changed when I entered college? So, you remember how I said I practiced basically every day of quarantine in the summer? Yeah, that's cute. That's really funny. Because as I was working on my engineering degree now in this highly pressurized learning environment, I found myself skipping a day, or 2 days, or 3 days without playing the trumpet. I think there were a couple of times in my freshman year where I went the whole week in between weekly university trumpet lessons without touching it once. And that was a mixed bag. On one hand, I pleasantly surprised myself with my ability to skip days. For years and years, I'd built up this preconceived notion that I could not skip a day or it would be the end of the world. Mind you, on the old embouchure, it really was the end of the world. Every time I skipped a day, I couldn't play at all. But I realized on the new embouchure that just wasn't the case anymore, and I could sort of outgrow that notion, which is really good for me. But of course, on the other hand, it sucked. It sucked. I hit a plateau with my playing. And keep in mind, I was also starting to work more on low brass around this time, and I wanted to be good at everything, and of course, I ended up not being as good at anything as I could have been at any one of those things had I focused on them, and I started morphing into the sort of jack of all trades, master of none that I am today. But in any case, in addition to that, all of my public playing outside of lessons was done online and virtually and all that, and I was in college now and still not in an in-person wind ensemble, and this year was the one that really just started to do me in a little. Now, sophomore year of college, which is what I just finished, was a lot of the same stuff. Despite the fact that I was doing in-person music a lot more now, it really was the same sort of experience. There were many weeks, many more weeks, where I went basically without playing the trumpet at all, maybe picking it up once or twice in between weekly lessons, and my time was stretched thinner than ever. It was all exacerbated by the fact that the previous summer I'd worked as a repair tech at a music shop, and what that meant was I developed a lovely set of repairman's chops, where basically my practice for the day, for many, many days, consisted of basically fixing a horn, test playing a couple notes, moving on to the next horn, test playing that. And so there was no consistency at all in what I practiced or what I practiced on. All sorts of different gear at all different times, and yeah, just no consistency whatsoever. And so I entered that year really at a low point musically. But I will say, despite how thinly I was stretched and how awful my chops were getting into the year, it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of musical firsts over the course of this year. I joined the local British brass band, which was super cool. It's to sort of develop that side of my playing a little bit more, which was a side I'd had a little bit of a feel for in previous years just through self-training, but I finally got to actually apply it in context, which was awesome. I played my first musical show for a local high school, actually the one that feeds into my university, and so I played lead trumpet on that and finally got to put the high notes to use again, and that was super fun. Just a lot of really great stuff happening this year, despite, playing all these different instruments and often, the trumpet often taking a backseat. I still found kind of ways to ride on the waves of adversity, and despite not playing much at all, period, let alone with other people, I still kind of found ways to work on my own musicianship. So, welcome back to present day. This fall, I'll be celebrating an entire decade of playing the trumpet, which is sobering, because I know that in many ways I am not nearly the trumpet player I could have or maybe even should have been with 10 years of training. And, you know, I get pretty down on myself in my playing, and, you know, all of my past private teachers will tell you that I can be a little bit toxic to myself sometimes. And so it's tough not to look back on those 10 years and think, man, is this really as far as I've gotten? But, I mean, you know, you have to factor in that I didn't, you know, start caring until about 3 years into the journey. I didn't have proper training for quite the while, and I've had some rough patches in there, and I'm also not going to school for music. So, you know, taking a step back, with all things considered, the last time I did this video for 50 subscribers, I ended on a note of regret. I've been playing for this long, and there are so many things I would have done differently. This and that, the other thing, and don't follow in my steps and make the same mistakes I did. It's not worth living life that way. You know, all of these experiences have made me who I am. I've had periods of rapid musical growth. I've had periods, month-long periods of just stagnation. I had a huge drop-off point in the middle of my playing career where I basically went back to square zero. And you know what? I wouldn't trade any of it. It all contributed to who I am today as a musician and as a person, and I'm very thankful for it all. I'm hugely thankful for all the people and friends and mentors and resources I consulted along the way. It just would not have been possible without all of you. And so if you're tuned in and you know in some capacity you've helped me, thank you so much. It's been a real journey. I'm super thankful for it all. And like I said, even though I'm not nearly as good of a player as I could have been, I'm thankful for where I'm at, and I'm thankful for the ability to continue making music. I think that's where we put a bow on it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like down below. If it gets 50 likes, you know, that's a little bit of a push, but we'll see if we can do it. I'll release a video on my doubling story, which is frankly a lot more interesting. It goes over a lot more different instruments and when I started playing them and my experiences with those. So, you know, 50 likes, I think we can do it. Let's see it happen down below. If you're still watching and you realize you're not subscribed, consider subscribing down below. It's a small gesture with a huge impact on the channel. Chances are, if you've listened to me talk for this long, you must have liked it at least a little bit, so that'll be a good way for you to stay up to date with my content. In any case, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the flip side.